token economies have existed since time immemorial. They existed in sort of ancient China. They existed in on the border of the Byzantine Empire in the 7th century AD, and that's pre-capitalism. So I think it's fair to say that one of the things the NFT did was it rendered transparent the relationship between art and money. And I think that is from my perspective, that's a very good thing, because I think fine art, contemporary art, historically has tried to obscure the relationship between art and money. And I think money is very important. It's very important that artists can get paid a living wage. But of course, we are clearly living in a new stage of capitalism. Web3, I think, does represent a new stage of tech capitalism. On the other hand, tokenomics and not only NFTs, but also, ordinals and other kinds of token have precedent pre-capitalism. So there are developments we're seeing right now which have precedent in the period before capitalism, before art in its modern sense. So for me, that's very interesting.
And do you have some examples of that, Alex? Like what examples? Because I find that very interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, probably the best example, the easiest example I can use is the Byzantine token, the pilgrim token, and that was the basis for my project with Ana Maria Caballero, Artifacts. And for example, if you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, in New York, you will find a collection of what are called stylite tokens, and these are tokens made in lead or ceramic that have the imprint of Saint Simeon Stylites, who was a famous ascetic saint. And what people would do, they would burn incense on these tokens, and they would achieve spiritual grace, spiritual healing, but also medicinal healing from these tokens. So this was an Orthodox Christian token economy. And this sort of AI generated project that I did with Anna recently, in a sense, was trying to show that actually what we're seeing now is not necessarily art in its traditional sense. It has a kind of historical quality that brings us back to Byzantine tokens, to Hawala networks. We published a text early on Right Click Save called The Hawala History of the NFT. Hawala networks have been a kind of really interesting alternative economy for many centuries. And I think basically, Callo, I think what I like about art after NFTs is it allows us to talk and think about alternative economies. And we published a text by Judy Mam on 01, and which is an interesting platform because it, in a sense, what it does is it shows you the value of art beyond financial value. And I think that is something that has been true of art for many centuries, before the emergence of the market for art in the 17th century, which I think you were referring to. So that's really interesting to me. But of course, one has to be very responsible when one is drawing these very big historical relationships. And there's a historian who I recommend anyone listening looks into, called Reinhard Koselleck, and he developed a theory of historical times, which is basically premised on the idea that you can look at NFTs alongside medieval tokens, and you can see and find meaningful relationships between them. It's not an inappropriate thing to do, but when you do it, you have to be responsible in the conclusions that you're drawing. So for me, that's really interesting, and but it does represent, I think, a challenge to traditional approaches, not only to art, but also to academia, scholarship about art. And that's a big challenge to,
Yeah.
centralized networks which have existed for a long time.